Oh, we're live. I can read by the comments already that you guys are amped up about this. As amped as I am, probably a little bit more, just because I take sedatives. So when things are like this is I'm looking at NRG Stadium. It's just above, as you guys know, the studio up here at Sports Radio 610. It's just above my camera right now, and I'm looking out on it on a beautiful afternoon September day, fall weather. 80 something or other, billowing clouds overhead, non-hurricane clouds. It's brewing up, man. It's brewing up. There was a road rage incident where a guy on horseback shot at somebody the other day. I feel like this is a good omen. Damn it. Chicago's not going to out violence us. Look, Texans take on the Bears on Sunday Night Football tomorrow night. Just a couple comments. Let's see. I think you're going to see a lot of passing yards this week simply because the Bears can't stop it. Okay, I've got stuff to say about that. I don't know this Bears. Yes, I agree with that. Let's go. Yes, with a Z. That's about right. I won't be surprised if the Texans score over 40 points. So we got some good stuff brewing here. Let me tell you, I'm going to go through because there really are some great matchups in this game. And I'm excited about so many of them. I think most of them favor the Texans. I think when it comes to strengths and weaknesses, the Bears have some really good strengths. They're secondary, first and foremost. They had 22 interceptions last year. They are a ball hawking, zone playing defense. And there's certain things about them that might match up well versus the Texans. There's certain things that we got to be on alert for. But I think the biggest weakness on the entire field is the Bears' offensive line. And that includes if Juice Scruggs indeed does not play, then the Bears were a mess last week versus the Titans. And it was versus some good defensive linemen, but the interior offensive line, man, look, I played with David Carr in his rookie year behind an offensive line that had pretty much Steve McKinney. And like, no disrespect to the other guys, there are a lot of guys that wouldn't have been in the NFL if they weren't on the Texans. That's what that offensive line for the Bears reminded me of the inaugural year Houston Texans. We won our first game based on mostly defense and special teams, right? Sound familiar? So I'm going to go through because there are so many things to talk about. And I want to watch a few clips from Bobby Slowick's press conference. Going to watch a few clips, quite a few actually, because it was really good. John Gruden has a YouTube channel now, and he went through and did like a half hour on the Texans with some good stuff. So I just plucked a few of that half hour. Matt Burke and CJ Stroud. You guys know who he is. Let me. Oh, so many comments. My God. Is it bad that I'm such a Houstonian that I get scared when we're heavily favored? No, that is appropriate. You should always have a healthy level of fear, the appropriate amount of fear. You always have to have respect for the opponent. Look, is it up to 7? Did you say 7.5? Oh, no, I'm thinking about gambling too much. It's 6.5. The appropriate amount of fear. This is a Bears team that I think in the offseason people were excited about on behalf of the master of public relations, Ryan Poles, the GM for the Bears, which they just heap praise on Ryan Poles and what a magnificent job he's doing. And without ever mentioning that he could have drafted CJ Stroud. They could be 1 year further along in this process, except that he traded away. But he's so brilliant with everything he did after that trade, and it was such a good trade. Like, well, what the hell? If you trade away Joe Montana or Tom Brady, does that all of a sudden make you an incredible GM because you got such a boatload of picks for him? It's like the Dodgers trading away Jordan, as far as I'm concerned. Idiots. All right, here we go. Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick the other day was asked a very good question, I believe, by Cody Stutz, which was, how do you feel about Joe Mixon getting 30 carries in a game and perhaps how that might work out over the entire season?
Basically, I'd say he's probably one of the few guys remaining in the NFL that could handle that. I mean,
Bobby.
There's not many offenses you're going to run the ball to the same guy 30 times over and over and over and over again every week. But I'm not really worried about his workload in that regard. Like, he's just built and has in his past done that before and is built to do that. But it really is more of, we'll give Joe the ball as many times as necessary, and we'll give Nico the ball as many times as necessary, and we'll give Steph the ball as many times as necessary in tank, and like really all the way across the board. And every game's going to wind up playing out different. So, in that game, it was a 30-carry game for Joe, and when you have 30 carries and you're averaging over 4, in his case 5 a carry, That's a heck of a day.
All right, that buzzing came from the file that I downloaded from the Texans. It's not my equipment for once, so I apologize for the buzzing. He's not built to handle. Hold on, I did it. 510 carries in a season, so I don't think 250 plus is quite a bit. So I'm not sure about the. It's not going to be every week, I don't think. And this is where Dameon Pierce's injury. It's unfortunate on multiple levels, but I was hoping that if it did turn into a game where maybe they're grinding out clock in the fourth quarter, that Dameon Pierce can get a bunch of carries, but unlikely, I guess, at this point with Dameon Pierce's injury. And I think the biggest thing, honestly, is I was watching various people talk about CJ Stroud this year. I don't think that people outside of Houston really appreciated how little help he had out of the run game. And, I've seen people say, and on behalf of Caleb Williams, look, CJ Stroud's kind of an exception. You can't compare Caleb Williams to CJ Stroud. It's not like Ben Roethlisberger or Russell Wilson. Yeah, those are two guys who had it's not like them at all. Russell Wilson and Ben Roethlisberger were on teams that had good rushing offenses and good defenses, where CJ had an improving defense and zero rush attack at all. So now all of a sudden you see what you had last week, which is Joe Mixon's ability to run. The Bears were the number one rushing defense in the league last year. They didn't look so hot last week. Pollard had 5.1 yards per carry. That's boosted up by one long run, which credit to him. And, they were able to have a long run versus the Bears, but it wasn't, they didn't run the ball a lot just because of the game situation the Titans were in. So we didn't really get to see how Chicago's run defense played out. Pollard had 82 yards on 16 carries. So I think it's a better test this week for the Texans than the Colts were last week. Next question to Bobby was on the manner in which they used Stephon Diggs.
His ops in the last game really, again, it was a lot of shell. So when his ops were called, it just didn't happen to be the right play. And a lot of times when we had to get the ball down underneath, he was the guy that was under there. But I think it really helps just reinforce to the quarterback that we can be willing to get the ball just for a completion when we don't get what we want, and we can trust the guys underneath to go move the chains, And like an example is one of the first third downs of the game, we throw it short of the sticks to Steph, and Steph's like kicking himself that he didn't get the first down, because he takes a lot of pride in that. Their secondary is very good.
That was when Steph was saying, "My bad, my bad." And oh my gosh, is that Stephon Diggs taking responsibility and account? Yeah, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. We got that covered. I think Mike Sando is a guy I respect a lot. He writes for The Athletic, but they asked a question in the column he was doing. Somebody asked the question, who's had a bigger impact or will have a bigger impact on the Texans, Joe Mixon or Stephon Diggs? And I got a little bit offended on behalf of Stephon Diggs, not because Mike Sando chose Joe Mixon. You can make an argument for that. I mean, the Texans were already strong at wide receiver, and then they bolstered that strength. Whereas at running back, or with the run game in general, they were a disaster last year. So maybe Joe Mixon has more of an impact. But Mike Sando said, yeah, he only had 6 receptions last week, not much of he had 2 touchdowns. When did 2 touchdowns stop mattering? And the beauty of it was the way in which he got them. This on shorter routes. Slant in the red zone, on an out, short because it was in the red zone on the goal line. But still, I don't understand in what world people are living where you can score 2 touchdowns, but because you didn't get 100 yards receiving, it wasn't a big impact. The funny thing about it, too, is, and this is why I think it was probably a good trade for both the Bills and the Texans, the Texans were using Stephon Diggs in a lot of the same way that the Bills were last year. The difference is that with all that other wide receiving talent around Stephon Diggs, he's got room to run. So I reject to bring more math into this. I agree with Mike Sando's conclusion, but I disagree with the work that he showed. I feel like he used a calculator or something. I caught him red-handed. Bobby Slowick on the Bears defense. Some of you who have acknowledged they are potentially very fearsome defense.
Very good secondary. The backers fly around. They hit you. They're physical up front. They got some rushers, without a doubt, especially on the edges. They can put pressure on you. And that shows in how they played last year. I mean, when we watch tape, as an offense, we all think it's a very good defense, and all we've talked about ad nauseum is making sure we protect the ball and we protect the team. That's really our big emphasis as far as going into this game, making sure that we want to rack up yards, touchdowns, all that, but the starting point of this week is making sure that we hold on to the ball.
Yeah, and at the very beginning of that, he had said, first and foremost, the secondary is really good. I'd cut it off from the last one, and then he worked his way back up. This is a classic defense, like great defenses from the Lovie Smith era with the Bears, where not exactly the same, but they play a lot of zone, but they get a really good rush up front, and because they're in zone and because they have really good defensive backs, they're opportunistic. They get 22 interceptions last year, and they can be a headache. And those linebackers, Edmonds and hold on, I screw it up every damn time. Edmonds and Edwards. I always want to say Edmondson. Edmonds and Edwards. It's very confusing, but don't even bother making the distinction. Both very good. And I think those linebackers, they're going to watch last week's film and watch the podcasting linebacker duo of EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin kind of get handled and worked by the Texans offensive line. And these Bears dudes, like I'm not saying like the Texans offensive line is going to do the same thing to them. I think the Bears linebackers are going to be very amped up to not look like the Colts linebackers did last week, because the Texans ran all over those guys. And I know it was all in good fun and everything, but those guys had a lot of jawing going back and forth all season between CJ Stroud and them, and they got taken to the woodshed. So I think the Bears, aside from it being Sunday Night Football, aside from them being a good defense, like they saw that film and they're not going to want it to happen to them, which does create an opportunity for play action potentially if you get over aggressive middle linebackers, which we all succumb to. No matter who you are, if you're a linebacker that's all amped up and angry, I don't care who. I don't care if you're damn Gandhi out there playing linebacker. You will succumb to the play action if you start going water boy. If you're Gandhi and you go all water boy, and in the backfield you see British soldiers or something abusing their privileges, you just Gandhi, bam, and then boom, right behind him, it gets torched. Gets torched by Dalton Schultz. Sorry about it, Gandhi. The advantage of being able to run the ball by Bobby Slowick
is you gain a power position with controlling the clock. I felt like at multiple drives we were on the field for what felt like 5+ minutes, and for an offense it's really gratifying because you want to be on the field. That's when it's fun. And for the defense, obviously, when they're on the sideline, that gives them a little juice, that gives them a little energy, especially when they see the O-line blocking the way they were, the tight ends blocking the way they were, and Joe running it how he was.
Yeah, tight ends blocking the way they were. Very good. And like Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan, I think all showed something that they didn't last year. And I'll include at Ohio State by Cade Stover. Cade Stover is still learning how to block. And I think he took a big leap forward. Remember, I told you guys that first regular season game, those first couple regular season games for rookies tends to be when they take the biggest leap. So that was really good. And then as far as giving the defense a break that Bobby had mentioned, that's 100% true. The Texans had 45, 46 plays in the game. After a game like that, especially for a defensive lineman, when you rotate, you feel like you need to do wind sprints or something to burn off some energy before you get on the plane. Like you feel fresh as hell. So hopefully that pays dividends this week. We'll talk about the pass protection in a little bit. I'm using Tank Dell. I think Landry asked a question about this. Using Tank Dell on end arounds, reverses, etc. Jet sweeps.
He's incredibly fast and incredibly shifty. And it's really as simple as that. The guy goes from 0 to 60 like at the snap of a finger. And when you're doing stuff like that, where you're trying to get the ball to an edge fast, that's just really valuable. And it also protects him. And that's the other thing that we always want to do when we give him the rock in those types of situations, is make sure he gets to a position that he can protect himself and still get a lot of yards.
There was a play that I saw. Hold on, let me get Bobby's beautiful face up there. Future. Potentially, I'm a little nervous that Bobby's going to get offered the head coaching job at Chicago at halftime, and that'll be the distraction. If the scores run up and they're like, what the? Poles is in desperation mode. Like, wait, they're not going to write nice pieces about how smart I am tomorrow. It's time to start shifting the blame to somebody else and not the fact that CJ Stroud is so good and I could have drafted him. Let's get Bobby Slowick. So I think that The whole reason I put that on there is because when I edit this later to shorten it down to a video, I want to be able to show that Tank Dell end around. He takes he takes such a ridiculously aggressive step forward before he comes around, and because his speed is so threatening, it was almost as well. It was almost as good as a quarterback having a really good play fake on a play action or on a boot or something. It was beautiful, and then he just moves as electrically as he does. And I did like hearing Bobby say, protect him. Protect Tank Dell at all costs. He is like Wayne Gretzky. You are not allowed to get anywhere close to Tank Dell unless it's absolutely necessary. I saw a play in the game where right at the whistle, Tank was thinking about going up to block somebody, but the whistle blew, and I was like, oh, thank God he didn't do that. Just he needs to be like those Colts wide receivers in the old days who would just dive at the ground. But because he doesn't have to prove to anybody that he's tough. Everybody knows how tough he is. Okay, so this is a big theme of the week, playing clean football, because there were a lot of mental errors and miscues early in the game. The one that I remembered yesterday when I was watching that I had forgotten was just even between CJ and Joe Mixon a couple times. Joe Mixon was on the other side of the field of the formation than CJ expected. So cleaning up the football.
But, we really wanted to play clean football. That was one of the big emphasis we made going into the game. And I think execution-wise, mentally, as far as doing our job, in particular in the run game, we did that. But we didn't always do it well. If there were some technique and fundamental things we definitely could clean up. I know Joe had some one-on-one ops in the hole that he would like, and just little things like even how we have a track on a certain play or what our angle is on a combination up to the second level. We were off, and we still got some good plays out of it. But if we were on it, to us, like, we see explosives, so we felt like we missed a few of those. And then in the pass game was a little bit of everything. Protection was some physical and a lot of mental that we had to be on top of, and really it was the same route wise all the way across the board. Like it was a lot more inconsistent than the run game was.
Okay, hold on.
And
okay, so the miscues in the run game, I'll include a screen on one of those. The screen that Joe Mixon had where he got hung up behind Shaq Mason. Like in that situation, I don't know why Shaq was as reluctant or hesitant as he was. You just got to go, man. Okay, if you whiff on it, it would have given Joe Mixon an opportunity to just know where he was going. And you remember that, and I'll add this in later. Like Shaq didn't even really have to block the guy all that well. He just had to get in front of him. But Mixon was hesitant behind him, and because of that, I think probably in film he figures, okay, I should have just hit it anyway. But he was trying to be patient, let the blocking, play out in front of him. That was a miscue. Shaq had that other miscue. Unless the protection was something different, and I didn't realize it. It looked like he didn't pick up that game. The other one in the run game was that Grover Stewart tackle for a loss, where neither Laramie nor Kenyon Green were beat physically. They both Laramie left to the second level to go get a safety, while Kenyon was going up to get a linebacker. So that's just timing and teamwork between the two of them. Some of the blitz pickup was dicey. They were bailed out a couple times by Joe Mixon and Dare Gumbawale. And Damian too. I think it was I couldn't tell on the all 22 if it was. I think it was Damian on at least one on a blitz pickup. Had a really nice block. So that's a very pleasant sign. I think Singletary was good in pass protection. He wasn't as physical as Dare Gumbawale or Joe Mixon or Damian Pierce necessarily. So there were some things that they did in blitz pickup where it was pretty cool, because I think there was one time where Joe Mixon bailed out potentially the left side of the line because he ended up on a defensive end, and I don't think it was supposed to be that way. There was another time where I think the running back Dare was actually supposed to be on the big man, and they just let Laramie stay out there and play. So it got better as the game went along. Titus Howard early in the game, I thought his footwork was a little bit off on a couple of the blitzes. He cleaned that up in the second half. So whether they picked that up on film or he just started feeling better, I trust that that'll be better. But, the Bears with this defense, you don't want to waste too much time. And I think it seemed to be like there was an urgency this week by the team in trying to fix that stuff. Like they seemed the way they were talking, other than the smiles on their faces, it didn't really seem like a team that had won. They were more like upset with themselves that they left so many potentially explosive plays right out there on the field. Okay. Oh, on running the ball more as the game went on.
As the game went on and it just stayed too high, too high, too high, eventually you're going to take advantage of where your matchup is. And I think third quarter we started running it more. In fourth quarter it really felt like we threw the ball very little.
Yeah.
You make sure you have ammo.
I like it when coaches don't like really like they could tell they have that they're on to the next opponent and they haven't been pouring over the box scores and stats and the play-by-play and everything. Yeah, that was the way it played out. I think the fact that the Colts came out the way they did and played a lot more too high than they were expecting out of a Gus Bradley defense. And just so for anybody that doesn't understand too, whenever you're cover two, it just means two safeties. There can be different versions of it, but when they're deep, you're just playing it safe. You got your safeties back there to be sure if anybody gets beat, if Tank Dell or Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs runs by anybody, that you're going to try to, you got a safety net back there. And, it provides opportunities in the run game. And that's something the Texans couldn't capitalize on last year. They saw light boxes. They just didn't necessarily have the ability to do anything with it. I don't want to say that's the same strategy the Bears are going to do, because the Bears are going to do what they do, and they're a better defense than the Colts are. So the Bears play a bunch of zone, whether it's in the form of cover 3 or cover 2 or anything else, it doesn't matter, because it's not soft. They're not like a soft zone defense. They're an aggressive. If you think of the Legion of Boom back in the day, they play a lot of zone, but they weren't a soft defense. So I think it's going to be probably the same methodology early on, but also Eberflus, just like Gus Bradley, the Colts coordinator, he's really good at not blitzing, then all of a sudden and shocking you. So it's a really good test, but I'm also glad that CJ got that experience kind of biding his time. It's easy to know it academically that you got to take what the defense gives you, and all right, we got easy stuff underneath. We're not going to be able to go deep just yet. But it's a lot harder to play out. And we saw CJ make a lot of progress with that last year. But I think this year it's going to be like the year that Tyreek Hill left. It was actually the year before Tyreek Hill left. They were taking Tyreek Hill and the deep ball away from them. So Mahomes really had to learn how to be a more efficient quarterback and not be so hungry to go downfield. This is where the difference between wisdom and intelligence comes in. I think CJ is wise beyond his years. There's lots of smart young people. Ryan Fitzpatrick was smart as hell. Might have been one of the academically smartest dudes in the league, except early in his career, he had no judgment. He had no wisdom, So he's like a Silicon Valley billionaire or something. All kinds of intelligence just booming out of his head, but you got to have wisdom and judgment. And I think CJ understands that, and I think he partly, because he's had mentors like Tom Brady, who Tom Brady was perfectly happy to hand the ball off 40 times a game, especially versus the Colts. So I'm not that worried about that. If that's the strategy they use, then I think they'll bide their time. They'll try to get the run game going. They'll feed guys underneath, and then you take your shots when they're there. Next question from Bobby. Oh, on distributing targets to your various receivers. How do you do it? How do you feed all those mouths?
Like, we threw the ball very little. You make sure you have ammo for everybody. And through the course of the game, as soon as you try to force it to somebody, a lot of times what happens is you call a lot of bad plays. And we kind of get into a rhythm of guys understanding the intent of what we're trying to get done. So they know when their shot is called or when their time is called. And if the defense gives it to us, let's go.
Yeah. And again, Stephon Diggs in the game he had, I thought was the perfect emblem of how it's going to work for those receivers this year. Stephon Diggs in another offense without necessarily the wealth of receiving talent around him and without Joe Mixon, if the Texans had used him in that exact same way, he might have had 6 catches for 25 yards and no touchdowns. And, then we could have another discussion about how he might handle that. I'm not worried about it because he had 6 catches, but for 2 touchdowns. And in both of them, he had room to run. There was, and for all these guys, for all these wide receivers, I don't think any of them should have hopes of or like make it a specific goal to have 13 or 1400 yards receiving, because it might just not work out that way. That might be the difference between 1 or 2 games where you go off versus somebody else and vice versa. But I think they all will have room to run after the catch. And especially you look at Nico and what the presence he commands just by lining up outside, and teams having to make a decision on whether to give him the cornerback on that side safety help and all of that. It's going to be fine. I think I think as most of us here, except for the few scarce Bears fans, and probably even them, like I would imagine most Bears fans that are in the chat right now figured like, all right, yeah, I mean, Stephon Diggs has been fine in the first couple of years when he was in Minnesota. He was fine when he was in Buffalo. This is a 1-year contract, and he's playing for a really good quarterback. He doesn't have a lot of the other issues that, Josh Allen's pretty good. On the decision making that goes into going for it on 4th and 2.
Truthfully, it's pretty easy for me because I don't have the extra step of having to make the decision. So for me, it's like once 3rd down ends, I'm like, all right, 4th down call, let's roll. And then he tells me I get to do it or I don't, And I mean, it's kind of as easy as that, Like we got to the 2-yard line there at the end of the game, and I know he was thinking about what he wanted to do, and then he ultimately decided, hey, let's go score. Got to play for that. Let's go.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think the one thing I was surprised nobody asked this in the press conference. Just to kind of take us through the end of the first half. The sideline administration for the Texans has been really good since D'Amico got here. There have been very few game management issues and errors. At the end of the first half, when CJ thought the clock had been stopped and wouldn't start until he snapped it, but it turned out to be a running clock. That was just I really don't. I've thought long and hard about this, about whether I should criticize D'Amico and Bobby for this and CJ. And the official after the game claimed that he told CJ that the clock would be running. That official had already established that he had horrible communication skills. He completely and totally botched the entire situation. I don't think for a second that he actually communicated properly to CJ that the clock was going to be running. Because if there's one thing we know by now, it's that CJ is no dummy. And it was ridiculous. It was crazy. So I still don't know exactly what was going on there. I guess the only other question I'd have is, all right, they were going to try to run a play. So, I mean, that was likely going to be the last play of it, unless they had something real quick. And if it wasn't there, you're going to throw it out of bounds just to get a little bit better field position. But maybe they had something on the defense that they felt they were going to be able to really take a shot at the end zone and fool them with it. I have no idea. But that part was atypical for those guys. And as far as having the play ready, that's fun. That's the difference between being an offensive coordinator and a head coach. That's why when Bobby's off coaching the Bears or the Giants next year, he will see the pressure, how heavy it is, the crown on your head, that you got to make those decisions. Next question to Bobby Slowick. Oh, it's on Brevin Jordan. Speak of the devil.
I really think Brevin, through the course of last season, took a massive step as far as just being a professional, being an NFL player, and not just physically, but mentally and everything that goes along with that. So he knew he had to get in his playbook. He knew he had to learn our scheme. But then he went to an extra step of, okay, how do I devote this extra time to taking care of my body? How do I devote this extra time to making sure on game day I'm 100%, I'm good to go, I'm looking fast? And he grew into that as the season went on, which I think everybody saw the way he played as the season went on. And then he carried that over into the offseason. And all he's continued to do is get better and better and better, even through camp all the way into this game. I mean, some of the run blocking clips he had in this last game were some of the best we've had since we've been here. And that's stuff he's been doing since training camp. So he's just embraced all phases of being an NFL player.
Look, and that is just absolutely huge, because we've talked before about how a lot of times in a Kyle Shanahan offense, it's that second year where the run game really starts to take off. We saw it with Kyle when he was in Atlanta, that the offense really didn't click until the second year. And so much of it, if you look at the 49ers and how well they've done, having tight ends that can block really well goes a long, long way. The receivers, I've got a cut up of Nico Collins blocking. That's huge. If you want to spring explosive runs, your receivers have got to block really well. And we saw that last year. The receivers were all on board for blocking versus the Bears, which I do have to address one thing that a Bears fan in here said about this is interesting, TB17. Mixon's going to get shut down. Game will come down to whether the Bears can continue to get tons of pressure like they did versus the Titans. Yeah, Tony Pollard rushed for 5.1 yards per carry. Tony Pollard has been replaced in Dallas by Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not buying that, man. I'm not buying. Tony Pollard treated those guys like his little punk bitches. Yeah, that's what he did. So I'll smack talk aside. I do think it's a much tougher challenge versus the Bears, but I do think that Eberflus is no dummy, and he's not going to want to load the box or anything versus Joe Mixon just to stop Joe Mixon. I think there will be opportunities now. If Patterson's playing center, we got to see how he does. And I thought Patterson did better than I thought he was going to do last year. But now with him being inserted, if he's the starter, that makes it tougher. But that's going to be this game for me. Even if the passing game doesn't take off, if they can run the ball versus the Bears, and they'll have done it 2 weeks in a row, I'll feel really good about this offense. But it has nothing to do with the passing offense. The passing yardage and the games and the explosives and everything, that will be there as long as the passing game players stay healthy. It's really about, okay, if they're for real, if they can get out there and run with Joe Mixon, run with if Cam Akers is in there or whomever else, versus this Bears defense that I just think is a better defense than the Colts, then that's what I'm going to be really, really happy about. Here, speak of the devil, the difference between Gus Bradley's scheme and Matt Eberflus's scheme. I think somebody asked a question along the line of, Eberflus plays a lot of zone, Gus Bradley plays a lot of zone.
It's very different going from what we did last week to what we're going against this week. The way they run too high, the structure they run too high from, and what they do at the front when these guys run too high is different. It's extremely sound, and you could tell they've been doing it a long time. I mean, they're on it from the secondary to the linebackers to the D-line. They know exactly where they're supposed to be and what they're doing.
Yeah, and good. I actually did that. You guys would be so proud of me. I created separate files, so if I got lost, I'd be able to find myself. We'll get to John Gruden in a minute. If there's one thing you could drill into your head, zone defense does not mean soft defense, and it's actually quite the opposite. It's that in the really good defenses that play a lot of zone, just like the Texans are aspiring to be, you come up and your defensive backs tackle. It's all the old school stuff. If you can just think about anything you knew of Tampa 2 defenses back in the day, you got to have defensive backs that are willing to come up and hit and wrap up and tackle well and all of that. And the Bears do a really good job of that. And the other part where, go back to the Lovie Smith, I can just remember, I remember as a player just reading about Lovie Smith's defenses and watching them. And that it's so much about, okay, your coverages might look simple. And in this day and age, they're not nearly as simple as they were back in the Tampa 2 days. But so much of it is just flat out knowing that zone, your responsibilities, how to pick up route patterns and everything else like the back of your hand where you don't even think about it. And the Bears are looking very much like that. So what's it Sanchez call it? Sanchez was the color commentator for last week's game, and he said it's like thrown into a bouquet of Venus flytraps, which is a pretty good line. I'll acknowledge it was a pretty good line, Sanchez. I'm not convinced you wrote it yourself, but that's a pretty good line. So the really fascinating part is that, look, CJ's been very good against zone. And you saw it with Will Levis last week. Levis had some nice drives for 2 quarters of a football game. He made some nice throws. He just also made some boneheaded decisions. But there are opportunities. It's just the timing and everything else has got to be down pat. And they might have to bide their time to figure out, all right, what is Eberflus doing today? How are we going to attack him? You don't want to throw yourself into danger. CJ's been really, really good at that. So I don't worry about that part of it. It's just always, like I would say last week for the Texans, the wild card was Anthony Richardson's legs. This week for the Texans, the wild card is that's a very opportunistic secondary, and they can ambush you, and the defensive line is they are very good at getting after the quarterback, and they can ambush you. So and then special teams, we haven't even talked about special teams because I don't have Frank Ross on here. Look, they're freaking awesome on special teams. DeAndre Carter, and they blocked the punt, the Bears did, which is something that the Texans sometime in the long distant past had a punt blocked against them. I would prefer for all of that not to happen. Oh, please, if you're here, by the way, like, subscribe, etc., etc. There's at least a few. Oh wait, hold on. Let me I gotta plug my computer in. Let's see. Why are the Bears fans even watching a Texans content creator? I think part of it, I did a couple Caleb Williams reaction videos that I like to drink the Kool-Aid during the preseason. And Caleb Williams did some really good stuff against backups and everything, against some starters at times, not that Bengals game. But and this is where I'm gonna give a dose of warning about Caleb Williams to Texans fans. I think last week it was a bad performance. Don't get me wrong. If that was a veteran quarterback that went in there, I'd be like, no. It had all the elements of a rookie quarterback who was, I know you would never admit to being nervous, but maybe a little amped up or nervous because, let me get that up there. Because, look, this is not like if Josh Allen came into the league and airmailed a few wide open receivers, you're going to say, well, there you go. Erratic accuracy, doesn't have it, this, that. Anthony Richardson in his erratic throws. Like, well, yeah, we knew this was coming. He was erratic to a greater degree than I think Caleb Williams is going to be in his career. I don't think he's going to miss on those throws routinely. And I saw him say this week, and this looked like it did at times. There were times where he was just trying to get the ball out so fast that he wasn't even really getting to the back of his drop. He wasn't letting the timing and the rhythm of the play win the play, and everything was just a little bit out of sync. So it was very much on him. I'm not making any excuses, but perhaps an explanation, which is that at some point this season, he'll stop missing all those throws. I think he was seeing the game pretty well. I don't think he was, lost or anything, but he had an offensive line, an interior offensive line that was just not helping him out at all. A couple times he totally looked like a rookie, like when he took a sack on a screen. That was bad. It was bad by the offensive line, but it was really bad by Caleb Williams. Will freaking Levis made a good decision on a screen in that game. Where you throw it at the feet. It's not there. Throw it at the feet. You can't do anything about a busted up screen other than if he had run himself, but he started running backwards. They did the old college thing. That's where he looked like a rookie. There were a couple other instances when he was running to his left and he threw the pass that a lot of people criticized. He was kind of taking a hit as he was throwing, running to his left against the grain. If there were a veteran quarterback that had done it and the ball went to the turf and it wasn't complete, I would have said, all right, well, he didn't put it in danger of an interception. I didn't think that was the same type of decision that Will Levis made. So I think the scouting report and all the positives of Caleb Williams are still there. I just don't know how quickly he's going to be able to pick it up behind that offensive line with a banged up Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. And then also, I don't know what they're doing, having him just back there an empty, naked gun all the time. And Gruden, when we play him in a minute, says something about that. And is my thought I had the first time I watched the game on Monday was, man, you got a rookie back there with 5-man protection in front of him, and receivers that aren't necessarily like Keenan Allen. At whichever point he was in the end zone, you could see him limping in that game. They were trying to force some of these short throws. And that's a lot for a rookie. Just sitting back there in empty backfield sets. and he was barely under center at all. And when he was under center, they were, the running game was getting their asses handed to him. So I don't think the conditions are right for this week in NRG Stadium with that noise for him to clean up all of that and for him to deal with a bad offensive line in front of him. Let's see. Nobody wants Bagent to start. Yeah. Bagent, but he's an impressive kid though, man. Bagent will get a chance to be either a bridge quarterback or compete somewhere else, somewhere down the line. Chicago is filthy, no matter how much of Caleb is a bust. I'm not trying to prop him up. I think that I don't want to jump to conclusions based on one bad first game. You can see the potential for what would be there. I'm not sugarcoating it. It was a bad performance, but I think they got to help him out. And it's not just that guys have to play better around him. I mean, he was back there in gun, and they weren't running RPOs or anything. They were. I don't think he's good enough yet to really even sell the play fakes when they're in gun. And play fakes in gun are bogus and garbage anyway, unless it's an RPO. So, like a genuine RPO. I didn't get that unless he's just not that comfortable under center yet, which he had time to work on it. Whole line was injured. We were missing two of our receivers. Calm your tits, soy boy. I don't know who the soy boy is or which O-line you're talking about, whether it was this year or last year. Because you know whose O-line was injured last year? C.J. Stroud's. C.J. Stroud at times was playing with 4 backup offensive linemen, the fourth option at center, a tackle playing guard who's a miserable guard. He's good as a tackle, bad as a guard. So if that's I don't. No, Eric, I know you. You're one of us, aren't you? Judah Tribe. I remember Judah. Did Judah Tribe come back or not? Is Judah Tribe back in here? He said he was going to come back. Soldier Field, Evans sucks. Worst stadium I've been to. Good. Pretending 610 host takes are accurate after 10 a.m. is hilarious. Hey, you. You come after my family. You come after me. All right. We got to get to Gruden. Because I said I've got 4 press conferences I want to react to, and I was going to do it all in an hour. So here we are at the 42-minute mark. John Gruden. John Gruden has a YouTube channel now, and it's John Gruden with all of his football expertise. He praises a lot of people in here. So whether you're a Texans fan or a Bears fan, don't get overly excited about heaping praise. You know the Gruden thing. He absolutely loves this guy. Which guy? That guy. Any guy. But he does bring up some really good points about both teams. So I'm going to go through and bring up some of the stuff that Gruden thought after he watched last week's games for both these teams. This is interesting, and it's something we've talked about, but how he thinks the Bears should attack C.J. Stroud.
Pretty enough for you, was it? Well, a win is a win in the National Football League. That's a heck of a way to start the season.
Oh, wait a second. This is the wrong one. This is the whole. That's the whole damn. I can't give you a full hour, a full half hour of John Gruden. You got to earn that from me, John Gruden, before I give you the whole hour. Damn it. Here we go. Gruden clips. Let's see if this works.
I would do this.
Here we go.
I would force Stroud to be patient. I felt Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator of the Colts, tried to do that last week. Play a lot of coverage shells. Dare him to check it down. Dare him to hand the ball off. Test his patience, because a lot of young quarterbacks, they want those 18 and 22-yard cuts. They want to throw the ball to Diggs. They want to throw the ball over here to Nico Collins down the field. But just like Peyton Manning did, he proved, I have the poise and the discipline to hand the ball to Joe Mixon 30 times if you let me. And that's just what they did.
Yeah, so I don't know if Gruden was saying that he said this is what I would do, but then he says, all right, well, yeah, but CJ's already proved that he can handle that. Here's CJ Stroud talking about how the Colts played them and what that meant for the offense.
They played some different coverages that we didn't think they were going to play. backed up a lot, play a lot of soft zone, and a lot of defenses are going to make us play true and make us methodical, and that's fine. We'll do what we have to do to execute. But I think in that game we learned it's all about us, man. Like, we don't shoot ourselves in the feet. Like, I don't think we're going to be really hard to stop. Especially, it really starts and really will always be up front. And if our O line plays like that, man, it's going to be hard for us to lose. And
Yeah.
Last
I think CJ showed that he understands the assignment, that this is how it's going to be when you've got three wide receivers like that. Teams are going to be somewhat conservative, but then like it was with Gus Bradley, Eberflus is the same way. When they decide to blitz, they're pretty good at disguising it and getting after you. And I think what the Bears defense is probably looking at is not so much CJ Stroud and trying to flummox him or anything. It's that there's opportunities if the offensive line blocks the way they did last week, which is little off schedule at times in blitz pickup and pass protection. Some guys just getting physically beat at times. All of that, I think they'll see opportunities. I don't know if Laramie Tunsil is maybe still being bothered by his knee a little bit. I saw a couple plays out. It's weird because he was run blocking like the devil, like the good devil, like the cartoon version of a devil. Innocuous but still scary devil. And but pass protection, one play versus Leatu Latu, the rookie, it wasn't anything I've hardly ever seen out of Laramie Tunsil, and that was against a rookie. So that's my concern, is the pass protection and just how much can they really open up the passing offense if they don't get the pass protection figured out, some of the mental errors cleaned up by this week. This is Gruden on Caleb's performance last week.
Last week, Caleb got off to a really rough start. If you look at his body of work, he missed several throws. He had some balls batted at the line of scrimmage. He had to delay a game. He dropped the shotgun snap. It was a tough day.
It was a tough day. It really was. It was not a good performance out of Caleb Williams. There were at least 3 airmailed potential touchdowns. I'd say 6 misfires, or at least 1. I mean, even on some of the shorter throws, they were misfires. It was an accuracy that you don't expect to see out of Caleb Williams. And I think that as he calms down, if he can calm down, if his pass protection is okay, it'll get better. But I think it had all the hallmark signs of a quarterback realizing, oh, this is what an NFL pass rush looks like. And this is what it's like when I'm trying to run away from an NFL pass rush. He had a couple really nice throws when he was on his run to the right. There were other times where he looked a little bit non-USC like when he was scrambling. And, we've seen that. But he also ran for positive yardage when he pulled the ball down. Had a really nice one on 3rd and 10 in the second half that they really needed. And he pulled the ball down and ran for it. So that's that. Like Matt Burke alluded to in his press conference, it's a different challenge in terms of containing this quarterback because Caleb tends to scramble more to throw, whereas Anthony Richardson is, has got the green light to pull the ball down and just run at any given time. But you still got to contain him. You still got to be very disciplined. The old rule, like the colleges would try, is at the very least, if he's going to escape the pocket, be sure he's escaping to his left. He's not quite the magician rolling to his left as he is to his right. So I don't like to get too fancy with that stuff because that's when they jump up and bite your ass while he's rolling to the left. This is Gruden on the Bears offensive line.
Keep an eye on their
specifically their left guard.
Left guard, Tevin Jenkins, number 76. He struggled last week. In pass protection, I would expect D'Amico Ryans to put an army of defenders on that left guard and move the front with some stunts and twists.
Yeah, and so last week, the two sacks in the game came from Mario Edwards and Foley Fatukasi. I think both of those sacks also did come, though, because the defensive ends were doing a good job of containing and compressing the pocket. So the slower guys in the middle were able to come free, and Anthony Richardson was standing there. He hadn't been. Neither of those guys are going to chase Anthony Richardson down on their way to the sideline or anything. So it's going to be more of that, which means, okay, does that mean that Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson go sackless again? I don't care. I thought they did fine. When you're facing an athletic quarterback, it's more about just not giving him opportunities to run free. The one play, the defensive tackles messed up. Nobody had the middle of the field, and Anthony Richardson just ran. He had like 15, 20 yards without even being touched. That was the only one that was reminiscent of the really bad defensive performance last year versus Anthony Richardson. So they've got a lot of opportunities. The interior offensive line, they got smoked. Part of that was Tavondre Sweat hasn't gotten tired yet. His 360 plus pounds isn't weighing him down yet. That's a very good interior there for the Titans, and they kind of took it. They took the Bears interior line to the woodshed. And there's some opportunities there also for Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson rushing inside too. John Gruden on the Bears running back by committee.
Bears used 4 different running backs last week. Kind of uncommon. I don't know how they get any of them into a rhythm. We all know that Swift came over from Philadelphia to be the feature back. But in his carries, 4 of them went for negative yardage. There's nothing worse than calling a running play that loses yardage. You know, that's when Chucky came out. You hand the ball off to the back, and he loses 3 yards. That happened 4 times last week.
I think it was 3 running backs. Bears, confirm or deny that for me. I think it was 3 running backs and then a couple wide receivers. The tackles for a loss were the big headache. When you're trying to get a flow going on offense, and you only have 11 first downs, and you can't get anything going with the run game. Where DeAndre Swift started off the game with a really nice run early on, but ends up kind of highlights, even with that nice run, he only averaged 3 yards per carry. They were shut down. And I think part of that too, man, if you're trying to establish a run game and you don't feel awesome about your offensive line, and you're not utilizing play action really, other than the play actions they did do and the boots that they didn't really work out. It's hard. It's hard if you're not giving your quarterback advantageous, down and distance because you're not running the ball. That's going to be difficult. Not everybody's CJ Stroud. Not everybody can thrive despite not having a rushing attack. I feel like even if Caleb Williams ends up having a good year, it's going to be more in the fashion of other non-CJ Stroud type quarterbacks. Not nearly as impressive. Oh yeah, here we go. This is Gruden talking about what was annoying me on behalf of Bears fans.
The Bears are going to use a no-back set. I think that's something Caleb feels comfortable with. I would expect the Texans to try to exploit that this week because they're light in pass protection.
Yeah, look, when you stick a rookie back there without even a running back in the backfield, or there are times where there was a running back in the backfield, but there was no run threat, not just because they were bad at running the ball, but just because you could tell by alignment, by quarterback body language, everything else. And that makes it super, super easy for the linebackers in the secondary. So I don't know why. The only thing I can imagine is that because Caleb Williams is just so uncomfortable under center. And I don't know why they wouldn't try to work in even sham RPOs, but they really didn't help him out much at all with not just the actual play calling, but the game plan and the design. It was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. Now, maybe part of that's because they were down 17-0. So if it's a closer game early on, maybe the play calling and some of that is different. They probably in a perfect world, they wouldn't have had their rookie down 17-0 and maybe have to put him in that gun and air it out more or be more aerial, especially when the run game isn't working. So that'll be interesting to see if they work on that this week. But it seemed like a tough situation for a rookie to be in. All right, what should Waldron be doing? What should Waldron and the OC be doing?
Hey, why don't you just get your young quarterback some completions to start the game? Okay, what do you want me to call? Bootlegs? Screens? People are onto that. Caleb Williams is going to have to drop back, stand in the pocket, and throw the ball against a very good defense in this crowd noise to win it. That is a fact.
That's a fact, John. Man, I kind of feel bad for the kid. It's now remember, Bears fans, I'll remind you that you guys could have drafted CJ Stroud. your Wonder Boy GM that everybody gushes about, basically because he invites access in all the time, and you get these little nerdy writers to you let them shadow you for a few hours, and they're like, oh, you should see the way he operates. He's just on a different level. That it's not mentioned anywhere outside of Houston that they could have drafted CJ Stroud, like the guy that's supposed to be so brilliant, just decided to pass on a guy who ended up having an incredible rookie season, and who, in terms of maturity and mental processing, by way of just pretty much every quarterback and coach and everybody else who watches the games, confirms CJ's just on a different level. And yet the brilliant GM gets all kinds of praise for pulling off that trade with Carolina when he could have had CJ Stroud. So now he's got to sit it out and wait and see. And he'll start pinning it off on Eberflus if it doesn't work out. But yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, Gruden on Joe Mixon coming up. Let's see. First we have the Texans defense. What to watch out for with the Texans defense.
They gave up too many big plays. The Texans have to be disgusted with themselves on defense. 3 plays of 50 yards or more. And they had 3 other touchdowns that should have been there. They had wide open receivers, and Richardson missed 3 of them.
Yeah, Richardson missed 3 of them, just like Caleb Williams missed 3 of them last week, or 6 of them really, or just the deep balls. There were 2 egregious deep balls. He had one really nice deep ball over the middle, but he also just airmailed it, like completely airmailed it. And unlike Anthony Richardson, that's not really in Caleb Williams' scouting report, but the big plays are a thing. So when I'm watching that film last week, I'm thinking, and this is, I'm watching it on Monday, the day after the Texans play, and I'm looking at receivers wide open downfield with chances to score touchdowns, and it looked a lot like what the Texans allowed. Well, in the one instance, Derek Stingley. The other, a couple of the deep balls were to Alec Pierce. I think you could make an argument that they were 50-50 balls. The problem was that Jimmy Ward had a bad relationship the entire way. The second one, the one shot to Alec Pierce that got the Colts down to the red zone. I mean, Alec Pierce was gaining ground on Jimmy when the ball was, somewhat underthrown. Could have been an easy touchdown if the ball was thrown a little deeper. And Pierce had to come back to it. So it wasn't like Jimmy Ward was really in a position to contest that one. The other one, the touchdown early in the game, that was versus quarters coverage, and Derek Stingley's trying to chase 2/3 of the way across the field, and Jimmy just didn't intercept it at the right time. So they could contest it, but it wasn't like Jimmy was in a good position to contest it. So that's the stuff we have to clean up. Kalen Bullock, I think, is going to play more than 50% of the snaps like he did last week. I think they're going to keep working him in, and he probably showed that they can trust him. It's just a matter of when, where, and what circumstances. But the main point remains, the Bears did have opportunities downfield. So it wasn't like the Titans just completely squelched them the entire time. There were opportunities. Caleb Williams just misfired on a couple of the big ones. Oh, Gruden on Joe Mixon.
I love Joe Mixon. I don't like him. I love him. I said it a couple weeks ago. There's good burgers and great burgers. There's good hotels, great hotels. There's good backs and great backs. And don't anybody second guess Mixon.
You hear me? You don't ever second guess Mixon, damn it. The only problem with Gruden is I have no idea how many running backs he's already said this about. I feel like he gives that level of praise to about 1/3 of the players in the league. So it's a good gimmick. I like the way guys who played for Gruden are alarmed or just always amused by how different this is from Gruden's personality towards his own players when he was a coach. People have this image of Gruden must be like, oh, he must just be such a super motivational, upbeat guy. He's just so positive all the time. Yeah, it's a good way to. Sometimes you can criticize others by heaping praise on the counterpart. So it's there's a little bit of that going on sometimes. But with Joe Mixon, the way he ran last week, especially when they needed to run the ball. That's just something we haven't seen. I mean, I don't want to forget what Dameon Pierce did 2 years ago. The situation was just so completely different. And, even before Dameon got hurt in his rookie season, those last few games, he was starting to show signs of wear and tear. Mixon's been very durable. Mixon's vision on the zone runs is just above and beyond anybody else we've had in here. So Mixon and his ability to make imperfect blocking look good, to deal with penetration in the backfield, but he's seeing the cutback lane and making the cutback without losing any speed at all. It's different. He's not as top end athletic as Arian Foster was, but I think when it comes to the vision and the ability to see and almost kind of have the defense on a string, I think that's on the same level as Arian Foster. If he had that same kind of speed and elusiveness that Foster had, that breakaway speed, then it would, at his body weight, especially Joe Mixon's body weight and size, and that would be a whole different deal. But I'm not gonna. I know some people have tried to say he's the best Houston's ever had, and I vehemently disagree with that. I don't agree with that one bit. Let's see. Oh, on on a player. On a player whose name he mispronounces, but I can't fault him for it.
They have a third down back, number 33. His name is Dare. That's his first name. And I dare you to blitz him because he'll splatter you, man. He'll stick up right in there. He'll stick you, man. I like him.
Yeah, Darian Gambawale, or Dare even. If you go Dare, I get it. He's not Dare. It's okay. Gruden has these written out phonetically. If you zoom in on that, pinch your fingers apart. He has Toa spelled out phonetically, and he has Fatakasi spelled out phonetically. I respect that. It's a wise strategy for somebody in his profession, whatever he's doing these days. Yeah, I think Dare Gambawale deserves a lot of credit for some of his blitz pickup and his pass protection. Joe Mixon, I thought, was great in pass protection. Dameon Pierce did a good job on at least one play that I noticed. And that's an improvement. Having multiple guys who really get it and understand and are on the same page as everybody else, that pays a lot of dividends, especially in the case of Mixon because he's such a running threat. But it's just one of those things that if you haven't been watching the Texans long, you just haven't. Wait a second. I'll tell you one more, though, too. It was really impressive what Gruden did in this video. It was a half hour of him talking based on just the film he had watched, said a lot of positive things about Bears players, said a lot of positive things about Texans players, pointed out some of the issues. But the two things were, okay, he mispronounced Dare Gambawale. I say the wrong damn name 33% of the time, so I can't fault him for that. He was talking about Nico Collins, and he was gushing praise on Nico Collins, and he said, I don't know who, but somebody's going to pay that guy a lot of money. And I'm like, well, I liked it because for Bears fans, he just got extended this offseason. I like it because it shows you that Gruden is definitely watching the film. He's not just some of these guys on the pregame shows, some of the old coaches, you can tell they're just reading bullet points off of something a producer has told them, and maybe they'd watch some highlights or something. Gruden really, you see the writing behind him. He really sunk his teeth into this. And it was an easy half-hour watch where he didn't use any film at all. And he's got like 2 or 3 cameras. He's got some production costs sunk into this thing, but they didn't go and show film examples or anything, but it was really engaging for like a half hour. I was really impressed. Imagine that. He's really good on television or digital television. Oh, here it is. I spoiled it. I apologize. Here he is on Nico Collins. Damn it, Seth.
He had 1,300 yards last year. But this guy lines up on the backside of trips. They put 3 receivers on the right, and they put Collins over here by himself. And if you give him single coverage and you try to load these 3 receivers over here, he will kill you. The thing about Collins I like, if it's a 50-50 ball, he's going to go get it. He's vicious when he goes up for it. And he's very good after the catch. Let me tell you, Nico Collins and Dell ran a double post last week against Indianapolis. We threw the ball to Dell, thinking he's faster. Nico Collins is faster on that play than Dell. This guy can really roll, man, and mark it down. He's going to get a huge contract from somebody.
Hey. What are you working for Mulligetta? That's too early for that. All right? And Mulligetta's not Nico Collins' agent. His is Rosenhaus, is it not? Yeah. Don't start negotiating. The whole thing about Nico was there were people that were skeptical of how much money they paid Nico in the offseason. And then you watch the wide receiver contracts get doled out and doled out and doled out, and all of a sudden Nico's, not. I think he's outside the top 10 for receiver salaries right now. Maybe he's 10th or so. But by the end of next offseason, he'll be way below. And Nico's not the kind of guy that I think is going to be agitating for a new deal before it's up. So, look, Nico and his ability, a couple of you pointed out that he had done a video. I saw the title of that video. I think I even retweeted. Oh, yeah, I retweeted Texans Stressins. What's his actual name? Anyway, go to my Twitter feed, Seth C. Payne, because I knew he was talking about that, about Nico when he's lined up as the X, and you got three receivers on the other side of the formation. The defense has to make that decision. All right, do we leave our defensive back alone on him, our corner alone on him? Do we rotate coverage? It kind of forces the defense's hands, and that's one thing that I don't want to mess up the kid's name. It's Tyreek, right? Yeah, Tyreek Stevenson was 3rd-round pick last year, 2nd-round pick last year to the Bears. He had an interception last week. He's playing well. He might have been a real find for one aforementioned Ryan Poles, but Tyreek Stevenson has just flat out said, like, yeah, I know they're going to come after me. We got Jalen Johnson on the other side that I'm going to get tested. So this would be that year where if Stevenson ends up being a really good cornerback in the NFL, usually what you see with good cornerbacks is they have a bunch of interceptions in their first couple of years, and then teams stop trying to test him. I think the Texans and others are going to try to test him, and maybe it's your opportunity, maybe it's not. He's still got some weaknesses as a younger guy, but that's the bind that you put these guys in. You can have Nico Collins manned up by a second-year player at times. I like that Jalen Johnson has a chip on his shoulder too. I can only imagine how many chips he has on his shoulder after watching the entire offseason be about CJ Stroud. And then also, this week, I think probably Eberflus is doing a good job of pointing out that nobody thinks we can win. Nobody believes in us. I feel like Jalen Johnson will take that the most personal. I love grudge matches. I hope he talks some like world-class smack beforehand. Couple more here from John Gruden. This is Gruden on the he makes a good point about the I think this is the one. This is a good point about the defensive line.
They lull you to sleep. They show you all these different coverages, and you don't think they're blitzing, do you, Will Levis? Until kaboom! It's a sack strip, fumble, interception. They have a very good defensive scheme, and the players all tackle.
Okay, that wasn't it. Players all tackle. That's key. They come up, they do all those things that a team that plays a lot of zone needs to do. They come up and they tackle. They're sound. They avoid run after the catch. But there are opportunities. It's just because they do play zone as much as they do. And trust me, I'd rather have a team that plays a boatload of zone, but they're really good at it, than I would a team that plays a boatload of man and they're getting roasted half the time. So, the whole – remember for a while there in the NFL, it was like, oh, nobody plays zone anymore. That's for suckers. And then the advent of the RPO and the running quarterback and everything came along. And now teams are realizing, like, all right, it's kind of nice to play zone and at least be able to see if they're running or passing. And the Bears are positioned well in that regard. Now, last year's defense for the Bears, which was number one rush defense, led the league in interceptions, tied with San Francisco. But they didn't they didn't fare great versus great quarterbacks. So like, okay, in some regards, I think it feels a little bit like the Texans offense where, okay, man, they did some really good things, but they weren't so impressive versus really good defenses like the Panthers or the Ravens. The Browns was the one defense that was a legitimately good defense last year that the Texans just tore the top off of. But other than that, the Jets in that game, that was a weird game. Both these sides of the ball have something to prove, I think. And I think the Texans defense challenge, we've talked about how CJ and his challenge is taking what the defense gives him. Team's going to just try to play shell coverage, try to, lull the quarterback into taking a deep shot or have him get agitated and, impatient. So CJ's challenge is in being patient and not getting too greedy. I think the Texans defense challenge is somewhat the same in that the Bears have some weaknesses. Their O-line is a weakness. Last week, they didn't run the ball well, and they're playing a rookie quarterback. So sometimes your tendency is to start thinking like, all right, we're going to be aggressive. I'm going to jump these routes. I'm going to take it. I've got a shot at a pick versus this rookie quarterback. That's where they can dupe you. That's where they can get you. So just being comfortable, allowing some gains here and there, but like not trying to pitch a shutout in the first 2 quarters, no matter what. You got to be really careful. Rookie quarterbacks can be dangerous at times just because people underestimate them. And this is what we've seen in the past. Think back to when Case Keenum was a rookie. Came in the first couple games, right? And you know what? He actually did a pretty good job. And boy, the ball was moving. He took some deep shots and people weren't expecting it. Defensive coordinator started turning the screws and blitzing and everything, and that's when you realize, okay, Case has a ways to go. But some of those teams before the defensive coordinators caught up to it, that was Case Keenum, not as physically talented as Caleb Williams, but obviously would go on to play a long time in the NFL. If teams take him a little too lightly, then they can really bite you. And I think people did that with Case early on. In my mind, it was like 3 good games in a row, but one of you can fact check me on that. This is Gruden on the Bears linebackers, the Ed twins.
I love TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. They're 2 inside linebackers. We compared them to Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher last week. And everybody, oh, Gruden, they're not that good. Oh, you're too. Hey, there's something else, man. They got the speed and the instincts to make plays. They got the speed and the instincts to recover. They get fooled by play action. Boom, they run it down. It's a 4-yard gain.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. Get fooled by play action, but you still run it down. That ability to pursue. Like this Bears defense is a lot like philosophically what D'Amico would like his defense to be like. And I think has the ability to, if they can clean up some of these mental errors. And I'm not trying to put these guys on, like the Bears defense as 85 Bears status or anything, but they've already shown the ability to take the ball away to an extreme degree. And they've got that front that attacks and rushes and makes quarterbacks uncomfortable, and then opportunistic players on the back end. And one of the big things is that swarm mentality, just flying around. So you gotta earn everything you can do. Will Levis had a couple good drives in the first half last week, but he couldn't earn it for 4 quarters. They couldn't sustain it. And then Will Levis just did Will Levis things. I don't worry about CJ Stroud doing they had a 17-point lead. Then and then they botch it with special teams, and they botch it with stupid quarterback decisions. The Texans special teams, we're not accustomed to seeing huge gaffes like that last week. I think they very much understand the explosiveness of the Bears on special teams, so I'm not worried about it. I think last week was about as good as it can get. It was a kick in the butt in some ways, in that the Texans were sloppy. They recognized they were sloppy, and they've got the urgency to clean it up. Whereas I think the Bears offense, they recognize that. They were just getting their butts whipped a lot of the time. The offensive line was just getting destroyed, just absolutely manhandled. That's harder to come back from, you don't take the Charles Atlas course in 1 week and then start kicking sand in the bully's face. It takes a while. Sometimes it takes like 2 or 3, but they got a brilliant GM, so I'm sure they'll figure it out at some point. It's just absolutely brilliant. Gruden on the challenge that the Bears defense presents.
The thing the Bears do a nice job of is they stem the front. What does that mean? That means all 4 of us line up in a certain position, and one of us will say, move, and we'll all move into a different position. They'll do that about 5 or 6 times in the game and cause communication problems and false starts. So keep an eye on these defensive linemen, all lining up like we're ready to go, and right before the ball is snapped, boom, we all move. And it causes a little bit of a problem.
Okay. Quick quiz, write it down. When Gruden's saying that, who was I thinking about? There's a little bit of a delay. I'll give time for the inevitably 20 responses that come back. Who was I thinking about? D-line, stemming, causing false starts, whatever it might be. And real quick, too, before everybody gets their answers in. Listen, Zach, this is... Yeah, I think that... I think you're trying to be too clever there. No, I said that Will Levis, he had a couple nice drives. So this is okay. I ran into this week. Somebody texted and they were trying to be way too clever. And they said, well, if the Bears defense is so good, then how come it was 17-0 at one point? I'm like, well, because like they ran the Titans had a couple of drives where they were nice drives, and they ran the ball effectively in the first half, or at least on those two drives. And there was a long return that got the Titans to go 3 in a row on first and goal. They had to kick a field goal. There's 4 quarters in a football game. So I said, yeah, Will Levis had a couple nice drives in that game, but he also did idiotic, stupid stuff too. Like, did you say there's 4 quarters? I don't understand how I have to explain that there's 4 quarters. So Laramie Tunsil, yeah, LT. That's exactly who we're thinking of when it comes to this stemming defensive lineman. Laramie Tunsil, Jeremy Tunsil, you got some. Okay, so as far as Laramie Tunsil and his false starts, I don't know what to tell you anymore. I'm done trying to explain it or make sense of it. One of those drives was killed because of that false start. It went from 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4 to 3rd and long, and the Texans ended up punting on it. So I don't know. I don't know if he cares about it. I don't know if there's an urgency to fix it or whatever it might be. As far as the stemming of alignments, I thought the Colts last week did a good job with some of their alignments and confusing the offensive line. They do a good job of just kind of showing atypical alignments and it's screwing up the rules of the defensive line if they're anticipating blitz. The Bears do something that I get mad at defensive linemen for not doing this more. Stemming your fronts, just shifting right before the snap does 2 things. One, it can cause a false start. You got to be very crafty with how you call it, though. We used to be. I'll sit back so I don't blow your eardrums out. You used to go like, move, and everybody would shift. You have to have at least 2 guys shifting when you say that, or you get flagged. But they started cracking down on that. But even if everybody just moves coordinated, sometimes you get a false start. But it changes the protection rules like right before the snap. And it is a mind bleep. It screws offensive linemen up. I would say a full third of the plays I ever made in the backfield with my slow ass legs were because of stuff like that. Just little crafty stuff. So when a team does it systemically, when they've got the whole line, usually it'd be me like being like, hey, come on, let's move before the snap. And the other defensive line would be like, I'm tired, Seth. I'm tired. And so it's just me solo out there. To be fair to those guys, they were on the field all 3 downs where I'd come in on 1st and 2nd down, and then I'd go get to drink Gatorade on the sideline if they did their job and kept me off of there. Oh, we're done with. Let me take some of these comments. I saw that our guy, Ross, I got to tell you, honestly, I haven't been able to read too many of your comments, but you've been here a long time. So I just, I appreciate the commitment. Using the old steers and queers in Texas thing, like aside from like the many reasons that it's a stupid, dated, caveman type of insult. It's not original, man. It's like what'd you watch? Full Metal Jacket this morning? All right, okay. I like my grandfather was offended by that in the 1960s. I know, I feel like you could come up with some new material. You're supposed to be an artsy city. You got that bean and everything. This is supposed to be a big deal. We've got our own bean here too. You can come flip our bean while you're down here. It was my score prediction was 48-14 on the show on Friday. I revised it upwards from 24-14, I think. If it's not 48-14, I'm done. Jordan Love, LOL. Oh no, was there news about Jordan Love today? Or was somebody saying Jordan Love was better than CJ? Let's see. Not putting up 40 plus. Well, me personally, Sunday Night Football post on Texans subreddit. Y'all work fast. I'll have to go look and see that. It's very original. Yeah. It's original the same way like the name Edith is popular again. It was it's grandma stuff, man. All right, here we go. Who we got here? CJ Stroud, the man who's going to put up 48 points on the vaunted Bears defense. 48, I say, and they'll only stop there because they're gentlemen. Damn it. Get out of here, Gruden. Tired of you. What happened to my CJ Stroud? Let's go with CJ. I only have a few CJ clips. You guys have heard most of these probably because you're diehards. Hey, if you're here, subscribe, bros and ladies. CJ Stroud. All right. So CJ Stroud, who, CJ Stroud, I think hit all the right things in terms of building off of last week's game. He wasn't super excited about their performance. I think that, I think if anything, it's hard to read CJ's tone of voice or his body language at times. But if I had to guess, I think he's a little agitated that they left some plays on the table out there, and he thinks probably way more about the opportunities than I'm guessing he had like he had his iPad all marked up by the time the plane ride was over. But this is CJ talking about last week's performance.
Show what we got, but it's kind of cool because we still did kind of play pretty good. Once we stopped shooting ourselves in the foot, the plays that we ran good looked great, but the ones that we just barely missed on, like it's like the little small things. If we clean those up, man, I think we would have had a way better day. But definitely great to learn and to win.
Yeah, and that's the key. It's great to learn and to win. I mean, the Bears could say the same thing about the offense. Hey, you get Caleb has maybe he gets the rust out, or pops his cherry. Hey, Caleb got his rookie cherry popped last week by Will Levis. Good for him. It's a rough environment. Now, I mean, we had to wait a while for CJ to really start looking like a brilliant quarterback last year. It was week 2. So that's how long the Texans had to wait. So if Caleb Williams is going to be the rookie of the year and he's going to deliver on all his promise, that's the timeline. He's got to show up in week 2. So seems pretty simple enough. I think that I think the good thing about last week was really some of the stuff, the way that they used Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and Nico Collins. It just shows that they're going to be able to threaten every area of the field because they have those 3 guys. And that it's not going to matter whether Stephon Diggs is running shorter routes. You see the Bears last week where you got Moore running all these shorter routes, but he can't really do much with it. They're trying to feed the ball to Keenan Allen, but he can't really do much with it afterwards on these short outs. They had some nice plays on some of the shorter ones, and Caleb Williams had a couple of good shots downfield. But they just weren't really able to attack every area of the field because of a combination of their banged up receiving core. And Odunze looked like a rookie on a few routes. Like that'll get better. I think he's going to be just fine. But it doesn't look nearly as orchestrated as it will with like a second game of his career, CJ Stroud. Next question for CJ. I'm playing against the Colts' conservative game plan defensively. Some of you have seen this earlier this broadcast.
They played some different coverages that we didn't think they were going to play. Backed up a lot, played a lot of soft zone, and a lot of defenses are going to make us play true and make us methodical, and that's fine. We'll do what we have to do to execute. But I think in that game we learned it's all about us, man. Like we don't shoot ourselves in the feet. Like I don't think we're going to be really hard to stop. Especially it really starts and really will always be up front. And if our O-line plays like that, man, it's going to be hard for us to lose.
Yeah, and that's the big the fact that the run game did what it did. And I don't need Joe Mixon to get 30 carries a game. God, please no. But I do need them to be able to do it. And with Dameon Pierce banged up, it's unfortunate, not just for the Texans tomorrow, but also I would have liked to just seen exactly what it would look like if it was another heavy run game. And I know that Bobby Slowick says they don't worry about how much usage he gets. Man, we've just seen it too much. We saw this with Arian Foster back in the days where they would run him over the first few games of the season, and that was kind of the beginning of the end when it started to get to that point. As far as Keenan Allen, somebody said Keenan Odunze is likely not playing. He practiced on Friday, but they called up another receiver. Unless there's news about Keenan Allen that I haven't seen yet, but he's got a sore Achilles, didn't practice, and you could see later in the game that he was kind of hobbling on it. So it's not some kind of little made up something or him getting vet days off or anything. I think both those guys are probably going to be either not playing or limited when they do play, because Keenan Allen, and look, the reports about him being fat during camp were a little bit overblown, but he's kind of moving. He's maybe moving a little bit like he's fatter than he used to be. CJ's advice to Caleb Williams:
Be yourself. Understand whatever got you here is just good enough. You don't got to be superhero. You don't got to try to make all the plays. And sometimes the boring plays are good. But yeah, that's what the advice I would give to him.
Yeah, be yourself. Paint your fingernails, whatever. I don't worry about all that stuff. I did find it interesting that, for a guy that faced so much scrutiny for crying in his mother's bosom after he lost a college football game, that he had to tell Bears Nation that after that game last week, he was going to go home and snuggle his dog. Over under on number of blankies Caleb Williams has in his house right now. Is he an adult blankie owner? I would say 0.5. I think there's a greater than zero chance that Caleb Williams has a blankie. But remember, he never gets nervous. Even though he was air-mailing wide open receivers in the game or throwing the ball before he even got to the back of his drop, he never gets nervous. So you always gotta believe the guy that claims he never gets nervous and then pees down his leg. Like lots of rookies pee down their legs. There's no shame in it. It's how do you rebound after that? And I think it's starting to be fair if he pees down his leg because it's loud at NRG Stadium with the roof open. We did him that favor. We're opening the roof. I don't know how sound waves work, but in my mind, they seep out the top. So it's like we're handicapping ourselves just to try to make Caleb Williams feel better. CJ on playing on Sunday night.
I love our crowd. They do a good job of bringing juice and energy. I hope since it's a night game, people come a little earlier. Maybe because of the Houston traffic, people come a little late. And then on offense, if they could be quiet a little more, that'll help. Especially when we're going fast. It'd be hard for the guys to hear me. So I think we can be a little better with that. But hey, we love the energy.
Look, all right, CJ. Listen. You've politely admonished us enough for showing up late. I'm in there. I am in that building for every home kickoff, well before the kickoff. Part of that's because I'm not allowed to drink or go out and barbecue or anything like that. But I'll give you the quieter when you're on offense. We need to do a better job of that. With Houston fans arriving on time for a football game, you guys gotta. It's a strange part of our culture, and yet there it is. It doesn't matter how good now the Astros. It's gotten a lot better, so maybe that's part of maybe the culture is changing, and we just haven't been around for a really good Texans team as the culture has changed with baseball, and with Harden leaving a few years ago, we just haven't had so maybe this is the year. This is the year that it changes with some gentle prodding by CJ Stroud. Okay, this is CJ on Nico Collins. Oh wait, no, I can't play this one because I've got a video over it that'll give a copyright strike on the live stream, and it shuts it down. But I'll put it in the recorded version when I take out all my ums and all the homophobic slurs from the Chicago people. It's the way to go. Go to the old 1960s homophobic slurs, you gentlemen. I haven't seen a single homophobic slur from a Texans fan on here, damn it. In a good way. Saying damn it, like not damn it. Why? Why have there been no. Just Texans fans are being respectful. Jeez. Bears couldn't build a team if their lives depended on it, constantly looking for that elusive quarterback with no ability to coach to greatness. Them Cubs. Badgett isn't playing. It would even be worse. You'll lose the painted fingernails, boy. You're going to spend the whole week calling. I enjoy all of these, but I can't participate really. The last time I tried to participate, it was before the Ravens game, and I lost my focus. I lost all of it. Let's see. Will there be increased protection for the passing game? So, good question. So I don't know if you're, you know what? It's funny. Okay. That's actually telling. So I think obviously you're talking about the offensive line. In my mind, I'm like increased protection against big plays on the defense, because that's really first and foremost the biggest bit of rustiness or miscue that I'm nervous about on the Texans right now as a whole. They physically dominated the Colts on both sides of the ball. That's not me bragging or anything. That's just, look at the box score. The Colts had 45 plays of offense. Part of that's because a couple of the plays were really big ones that cut the drive, down to nothing. But the big plays allowed, and when they got, I'm not going to say they got lucky. It's Anthony Richardson was Anthony Richardson, so he airmailed the potential touchdown to A.D. Mitchell, but they can't be making coverage errors like that. That's what they got to clean up, and it wouldn't have bothered me as much after week one, and I could have chalked it up to rustiness or something like that if that hadn't been the issue last year. So cleaning up the stuff on the back end when it comes to the mental errors or just some of the physical breakdowns in coverage, that's my biggest concern right now. I think otherwise, physically, they dominated the Colts. The Colts ran for 3 yards per carry. The Texans ran for 5+ yards per carry. CJ had a 115 plus quarterback rating. It was a really good performance, except for those big plays. And those you can't just write it off as just a freak occurrence. And that's what would make me nervous about the Bears if the Texans don't hem it up, is that the Bears had deep opportunities versus the Titans. As much as I'm a little bit skeptical of the way they used Caleb Williams and kind of some of the pressure they put on him from a play calling standpoint, but they did scheme open some wide open wide receivers. Caleb Williams just couldn't take advantage of it. I would prefer that not to be an issue. I would prefer that to just be the thing that we're not talking about on Monday. All right, let's listen to. No, I can't get to Matt Burke. I got to get moving. So please like, subscribe. They need to be open throwing downfield to set up the running game this week. Strike at the defense before they set the early game. Slowick knows this. I know. You know what, though, Cosmo? I guess why? Like, if you can run the ball, why take shots downfield and force it versus an opportunistic secondary? It really is as basic as that. It doesn't have to be technical. It's if a defense decides to take away the deep ball, the quarterback would be a selfish jerk to try to force it downfield like Jay Cutler or something. Do you want Jay Cutler as your quarterback? You've seen these Bears fans in the comments. They're psychotic. Jay Cutler made them that way. So, no, I don't want CJ being Jay Cutler. I want CJ. What did the Patriots do with Tom Brady when a team decided to take away the passing game? They would load up and they would run the ball. They ran their way to a Super Bowl one year because that was the way it had to be. Now, with the Patriots at given times, it was because they also might not have speed at wide receiver. That's where it's a little bit different here. I think you got to bide your time and take your shots when they're appropriate. And it's not like the Texans took 0 shots downfield last week. It's just that if you can run the ball and if you can keep from having a punt blocked when you're backed up, if you can avoid letting up huge chunk plays on defense, then so be it. But with a game flow like it was with the Colts, I don't see the need to press downfield unless you have to do it. And you can just bide your time and wait for the opportunities. So I disagree that you have to do it. And like, they didn't set up the run last week by pushing the ball downfield to open it up. If the defense is deciding to take away the pass, by definition, you've already set up the run. If the defense is sitting back and too high and they've got 7 in the box or 6 in the box, you've already set up the run by way of your receiving threats. So there's no need to push the issue and Jay Cutler your way to disappointment. Let's see. They didn't need to. Right, yeah, I think we're on the same page here. I think but you got to account for game flow, though, Cosmo. So it really does depend on what Eberflus how he decides to play it. Like, you don't go into the game thinking like, yeah, we're going to push the ball downfield no matter what. I guarantee you there's not a single great offensive coordinator who thinks, hey, if that defense does everything they can to take away the deep ball, it doesn't matter. We're going to throw it no matter what. If we can also run it. Like that, it's dumb. It's dumb. That's like college thinking. That's high school thinking, where they can get away with it because sometimes the talent disparity is so big. And it's just not that way in the NFL. So I don't. I just disagree. I respectfully disagree, Cosmo. Jay Cutler. I like Jay Cutler. I liked his reality show with his ex-wife there. I felt like they should have kept the reality show up even after they got divorced. Ghost of Judah Tribe, I give cred to too for staying here for as long as he has. He came back. I asked him to come back after a week or two ago. It must have been after the game last week he was there. So I give him credit for coming back. We actually have wide receivers who can jump for the rock that are deliberately delivered high in double coverage. View the tape. Yeah. Yeah, we dominated Shane Steichen's Colts, was a lot better than anything the Bears have offensively. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you're saying my name because you're addressing something that I said, but I just like look, I'm saying the same thing the Texans have said. I'm saying the same thing Matt Burke has said. Like there's not a like there's nobody. Do you think D'Amico got up in the team meeting? I was like, hey, listen, guys, look, sure. Did we let up a couple of deep touchdowns? Did we allow 350+ yard plays? Sure. But we still dominated them. So who cares? Yeah, no, that's not D'Amico. So anyway, it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a really good game. I'm going to do something probably before the game tomorrow since it's such a long day. And I'll let you know when that is. Oh, wait, let me do this because I promised I would. I'd ask for the boldest predictions from the game. Let's see. On my community post, my sponsored community post. It's Caleb versus the Texans defense, not Caleb versus CJ Stroud. That was a question I had about. I was taken by surprise by a Chicago radio host who asked me when I was on in Chicago this week, is everybody in Houston down there talking about how Caleb Williams might be the next CJ Stroud? And I'm like, there's not a single person I've heard that from. It didn't even enter my mind, really. No, not at all. I didn't answer it like that because I pointed out that the Bears easily could have had CJ Stroud if their brilliant GM had drafted him. But two players on defense get multi-pick games, or the defensive line alone combines for 6+ sacks. One good thing that Caleb Williams did last week was not turn the ball over at all. So in getting sacked or in throwing the ball downfield, no interceptions. At the very least, his ball security is good. Diggs, Nico, and Tank all go for 100 yards. I think Damian's grit is infectious. Those two runs look more reminiscent of his rookie year than last year. Love Mixon, but I want 30 carries when you're grinding out a lead in the playoffs, not at home. Oh, at home, not in week one. Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice. I was hoping for that last week. I think with more of a lead, we might have gotten to see that. I was hoping to see it this week, but with Damian banged up, I don't think that'll be it. But we might see some Cam Akers action. Forced 2 interceptions, over 0.5 concussions in the game. I don't think either of those are overly bold. I think that's realistic. Pre-draft media was saying Caleb was the next CJ. Yeah, I thought whoever was saying that, I think it's unfair and also disrespectful to CJ, and that CJ's rookie year was different than, it was different than Tom Brady's rookie year. It was different than Ben Roethlisberger's rookie year. It was different than Russell Wilson's rookie year. Well, Tom Brady's second year. A lot of those debut years, he didn't have the support of a rushing attack. And I think that's still been slept on by a lot of people who didn't watch every game. And I think a lot of them don't also realize that CJ was playing behind 4 backup offensive linemen at times last year. It's too early to know what Caleb will be. Yeah. It's way too early. CJ dominated all the rookie years. I think he's different. He's just wired different. He's wired different. No, I'm not putting him up with the greatness of those quarterbacks yet. He's got to do that over the course of a decade or more. But by rookie standards, he was just operating at a different level by the end of the year. Yeah, I know. We forget Slowick wanted a more conservative run first offense. You know who's a really heavy run offense is the 49ers. Like does anybody, maybe 49ers fans get frustrated and they want them to air it out more. If it's a really good offense where you can run the ball and you can pass the ball, I don't see the need for it to be an air it out all the time type of scenario. It's just, do you win football games? That's all I care about is winning football games. I just want to run the ball when I can run the ball and pass the ball when I can pass the ball. Just be good. All right, everybody. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. Be safe.